Welcome to our first LinkedIn Live, which is also going to be used as episode 108 of the Find, Grow, Keep podcast. So whether you're watching live or you're listening to the podcast later, welcome. And today I'm going to share with you some statistics of what's happening at the moment when it comes to people and culture in Australia in small to medium-sized businesses. And, really what I'm going to talk about today is just how culture can lead business growth, because understanding your workplace culture and the impacts of it is one of the most important skills that you can gain as a business owner and a leader. And so, this session is an opportunity, if you are live, to submit your questions, but also just to go through those top 5 current trends relevant to small to medium-sized businesses. And this is based on the people that I'm speaking with as I'm going to business networking events. It's also based on my own reading of different research reports and what our clients are telling us as well. So I've tried to synthesize all this information at the moment and say, okay, well, what are those 5 things? And the first has got to be employee engagement and wellbeing. In Australia, we still have really low unemployment rates. So retaining people still seems to be the number one headache for business owners. And to retain people, we have to focus on employee engagement and satisfaction. And we know from the different research that is conducted by lots of different organisations, the things that continue to show as most meaningful or important to employees and their engagement are things like flexible working arrangements, wellness programs, being proactive about wellbeing, and also career development paths. Now, that could seem like a lot, especially if we don't have a lot in place right now. So I would just say to start small. So start with actually running an employee survey to gain some feedback from your team members, and then you can prioritise, because even though the research tells us these things, maybe your team's a little bit different. The things that I'm seeing most often at the moment come up that employees say that they would value is having a wellbeing allowance. So this is, rather than going to a provider that might give gym memberships or maybe gives like a wellness platform, it's a bit harder to access for smaller businesses because sometimes they have minimum employee number requirements. Also, they can be a bit narrow. So if you have 30 employees, it may only suit 5 of them. So whereas for smaller organisations, this is where just having an allowance, an amount of money that you provide to employees every year, and you say you can use that for your wellbeing. So whether that's for a massage, it's for a new pair of running shoes, it's for a gym class, whatever it might be. But then at least everyone in the organisation can access it. Career development ladders. I did do a podcast episode on this. I can't remember the number, but I'll put it in the show notes. And this is really about having a look at how can we enable this within our business. Even in small businesses, there can still be ways to encourage people to understand they can still learn and develop with you, and perhaps there are ladders that you can put in within their roles. With flexibility, it's looking not just at work from home, but work from home is a big part of that. So for some organisations that might still have 2 or 3 days working in the office per week, but they just let their foot off the accelerator a little bit during periods. So it could be through the middle of winter. Just work from home for those 2 weeks, because we know that that's when it's very hard to get on the train or get up in the morning, shorter days, etc. Or it could be the opposite. Take 2 weeks and you can work from home for those 2 weeks in summer, because it's a nice period to enjoy the longer days. For some organisations, it's during school holidays. We understand people have lots of commitments, so it's okay for you to work from home during school holidays. The other thing that I see organisations do is no meeting zones. So they'll, just carve out a piece of their calendar, could be every week, and for everyone to know that, we just don't hold meetings at that time. So it gives everybody that ability to actually do some deep work and not worry about running from meeting to meeting. The second trend is AI and technology optimization. So I don't think you can speak to anyone right now about business and not have AI come into the conversation. And we need to look at how do we leverage AI tools by automating repetitive tasks, streamlining our processes, and using data to make better decisions. So I just recorded a podcast, which is episode 105, with Janie Trivellin from Intelligence Assist, about The most effective ways to get started with IT in your with AI, I should say, in your business. It's not just about selecting the right tools, but being clear on the use cases before you make the selection, and then train your people on how to use it. And the things that Jane and I talked about was how it is a very different tech. AI is quite different to learning other technologies. So we need to train people on how to use it, and we need to train them frequently because it changes all the time. There can be fear from people on how to use it right. So they get concerned around confidentiality, copyright, privacy, which is fair enough, and also fear around it taking jobs. So this is where training and having a clear policy around AI in your business is so important. Third trend, leadership development. So developing leaders who can effectively manage hybrid or remote teams, really important, so different to managing in an office. Also, navigating the changing compliance expectations is becoming even more important. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit more soon. But if you go back to episode 104, I go through 5 essential leadership skills that I think people should have for long-term success. So I'm not going to repeat those here. You can go back to that episode if you're interested. And if you don't have a development program for your leaders, then one thing I encourage everyone to do is just one thing per month. So let's say that we decide that we really need to learn more about growth mindset. So all of our leaders say, okay, this month we're going to learn about growth mindset. I'm going to listen to a podcast. I'm going to watch a YouTube video. I'm going to read a book, whatever it might be. Everyone can do their own thing. But then at the end of the month, you all get together and you share what you've learned. Because the best way to learn things is by teaching others. And it's a great way to reiterate your own learning. So this is best done when you've also got some more formal training in place. So if you have an actual training workshop around growth mindset, and then you do that for the month, that's a fantastic way to really embed that in the organization. But if you don't have the budget for that, at least just do that one thing per month and then share together. Number 4, compliance with the evolving legislation. It's exhausting. I totally understand. Small business owners are just a bit fed up with what's been happening over the last few years. It can seem like such a huge task to stay updated with changes, positive duty, with sexual harassment, the right to disconnect, wage theft criminalisation. They're just a few of the things that have come in the last 2 years in Australia. But small to medium-sized businesses, we've still got to ensure that compliance because we don't want to be subject to penalties. But also, if we're trying to build our workplace culture and want a workplace that engages and inspires, a core component of that has got to be compliance. If we are not paying people correctly, if we're not following the legislation, how do we create a great workplace culture? It is the foundation. So what can you do? Just go back to basics. Have a look at your policies. Do you have them? Are they up to date? If you haven't looked at them over the last 12 to 24 months, you need to look at them. Have training for everybody around the important stuff. So things like workplace behaviour in terms of discrimination, harassment, and bullying. That's a key component of your compliance obligations. So make sure that you're doing that. Have audits on your pays every year because it's really important with these wage theft criminalisation changes. And keep your contracts of employment up to date because, again, with all these changes over the last year or two, it can be easy to miss things. Number 5, workforce diversity. So in Australia, we are a very diverse, multi-generational workforce. So we need to think about how we hire, retain, and lead different people to get the best outcomes for them and for our business. Now, it wasn't that long ago that people would complain to me about, these millennials. But millennials are 40 now, and millennials are quite often the business owners or the senior leaders. So now I've had people go, Gen Z. And I think that's part of what we need to be careful about is that it's very easy to generalise, and each generation has complained about the generation before them. But there's still things to consider as well. So, Gen Z, we think about, they've been brought up in the smartphone era. They are much more socially and environmentally aware. They've had social media saturation pretty much their whole lives. So it's important to think about the differences and what that means in your workplace. But also, workplace expectations themselves have changed, and that's not just a generation thing. So, I'm Gen X, but when I was 20 or 30, I would never have thought to ask to work from home. But now we have 50, 60-year-olds saying, well, I want to work from home. And that's because it's not a generation thing. It's just the workplace has changed significantly, and not just through COVID. So a lot of the reasons why we have this huge legislative change is because it is just mirroring societal expectations. So the positive duties, sexual harassment, discrimination changes came about because society had this groundswell over quite a few years now, perhaps starting with the Me Too movement. We said, we're not accepting this anymore. We don't want to be treated like this in the workplace. The wage theft criminalisation changes are the same. So we've seen a lot of media around different organisations that were accused of this behaviour, and we're saying, well, that's not good enough. We should be able to go to work. We should be able to have our kids and our parents and our friends go to work and be paid. So just have a think about that in your workforce. What do the demographics look like? But also, the way that you started working is different to the way it is today. So the workplace today is completely different to 5 years ago. It's totally different to 10 years ago. It is seismically different to 20 years ago. So it's time to think about that. And also another thing you can do around diversity, which a lot of small, medium-sized businesses have started to think about, is public holidays and swapping them for something that's of more meaning to someone. So, for example, Australia Day, if that's something that I don't want to celebrate, but I want to take a day off later, perhaps I want to take it off because I want to attend a day at NAIDOC week, or perhaps I want to attend a celebration with my family for Ramadan, whatever it might be, but a day that's more important to me, that I can swap the public holiday. Now, you do need to be aware, particularly if you have an EBA or your employees are under an award, which most of us are, that there might be some restrictions or just things that you need to manage in order to make that happen. So it's important to get some advice on it and to have a policy in place to make sure that you're not breaching any of the Fair Work requirements through enabling that kind of process. But it's definitely possible in a lot of organisations. Okay, so a couple of questions that came through for the LinkedIn Live one was around, how many days a week should we work in the office? And my answer is, I don't know. It is different for every business. It's different for every team, for every industry. And so the answer is, it's whatever works for you in your organisation. And so you need to first go back to, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Or what's the outcome that we want? And therefore, what's the best way to work? And whether that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week in the office, it's going to depend on what you're trying to achieve. And it's going to depend on the people in your business. So if you have a business full of people that are very early career, then you're probably going to want more days in the office because they need to learn from each other. If you have a business that's very remote with lots of people working overseas, then it may not make sense to have that many days in the office. So it's really down to your business. Now, I know there's been a lot in the media around this because of some different government announcements and changes. You can listen to those. You can certainly have a look at what other organisations are doing, but I highly encourage you to just look at what your business needs, wants, what works for you, and then engage your employees in that conversation about what that means. Okay, another question at the moment was just around, what am I seeing the main trends to be, which is what I decided to do the podcast around in terms of those top 5. But I also thought, let's have a look at what's the most popular podcast episode at the moment. And actually, it's back to episode 1 and 2 about improving poor performance, which makes sense to me because when we're in this kind of environment where we want to retain people, we don't want to go back out to the market to hire, then we want to be able to go, okay, well, if I've got someone that used to perform but they seem to be slipping, how do I get them back? So I understand where that might be coming from. The other one is episode 44, which is how to change workplace culture, which is also an old one back from 2022. And perhaps this is because businesses realise the importance of culture for retention in an economic environment where every time someone walks out the door, it is a huge financial hit, not just in rehiring, but in training and productivity. And also as businesses want to scale and grow, they realise the importance of culture. And sometimes the culture you had has changed, or it's just not fit for purpose in your new stage of growth. So I hope this has been really helpful for you to learn about what I'm seeing in the market at the moment. I'd love to see whether you agree or if you don't. And, what is it that you're seeing that's happening in your business? What are your biggest blockages and challenges? And, I'd love it if you could just connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, let me know. It'd be great to hear from you. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this episode and you've got some value out of it, I'd love it if you could leave a review over at Apple or Spotify so someone else can find the episodes to help with their business. We are releasing episodes every Monday at the moment because I've got some guests in. So every second episode, you may have noticed we started to be with a guest. So click the subscribe button and you'll be notified of when those are available. Thanks again. I look forward to connecting with you soon and we can start a conversation.